The Georgia morning humidity clung to Detective Sergeant Maya Johnson's skin as she approached the Atlanta Police Department's downtown precinct. Her pressed uniform felt foreign after years in plain clothes, the weight of her service weapon a familiar comfort against her hip. The imposing brick building loomed before her, its windows reflecting the early sunlight like watchful eyes. Maya adjusted her badge one final time, checking her reflection in the glass doors. Today, she wasn't Maya Johnson, decorated officer and newly appointed police chief. Today, she was simply Detective Sergeant Johnson, transferred from the East District, ready to blend into the corrupt machine she'd been sent to dismantle. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The lobby buzzed with morning activity. Officers heading to roll call, civilians waiting to file reports, the constant hum of radio chatter creating a backdrop of organized chaos. Maya approached the front desk, her movements deliberate and measured. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man with graying temples, barely looked up from his paperwork. "Detective Sergeant Maya Johnson reporting for duty," she announced, her voice carrying the authority earned through 12 years of exemplary service. "Hayes is expecting you. Third floor, corner office. Try not to piss him off on your first day." The sergeant's dismissive tone spoke volumes about the department's culture. Maya climbed the worn stairs, her keen eyes cataloging every detail. Faded motivational posters competed for wall space with outdated procedure bulletins. The building's neglect reflected something deeper, a department that had lost its way, consumed by cynicism and compromise. Captain Robert Hayes's office door stood ajar, his booming voice carrying into the hallway as he berated someone over the phone. Maya knocked twice and waited. "Come in," Hayes barked, not bothering to end his call. He gestured impatiently at a chair while continuing his conversation. "I don't care what internal affairs thinks. My officers follow my orders, not some desk jockey's interpretation of procedure." Maya studied Hayes as he spoke. Stocky build, silver hair meticulously groomed, expensive watch glinting on his wrist, a man who had carved out his own kingdom within the badge. His office walls displayed commendations from 20 years ago, alongside photos of him with various politicians, each image a reminder of the connections that had protected him from accountability. "Detective Sergeant Johnson, welcome to the real police work," Hayes said, finally ending his call. His handshake lingered a moment too long, his eyes appraising her with the calculation of a predator sizing up new territory. "I've reviewed your file. East District, solid arrest record, no complaints. That's what I like to see." "Thank you, sir. I'm ready to contribute to the team." Hayes leaned back in his chair, his smile not reaching his eyes. "The team, yes. Well, we do things differently here. This isn't some suburban beat where you worry about every paperwork detail. This is downtown Atlanta, real crime, real consequences. My officers understand that sometimes you have to bend the rules to get results." Maya nodded, filing away his words while maintaining her composed facade. "I understand, Captain." "Good. You'll be partnering with Detective Marcus Williams today. 15-year veteran, knows the streets. Learn from him. But remember, I run this precinct. Chain of command exists for a reason." The morning roll call assembled in a cramped briefing room, officers filling worn chairs with the weary efficiency of routine. Maya positioned herself near the back, observing the dynamics as Hayes addressed his troops. "Before we start, I want to introduce Detective Sergeant Maya Johnson, transferred from East District. Johnson, stand up." Maya rose, acknowledging the room with a professional nod. She noticed the mixture of indifference and mild curiosity in her new colleagues' faces, all except one young Latina officer who offered a genuine smile. Hayes continued his briefing, his casual racism emerging in subtle ways. References to urban elements and certain neighborhoods pepper in his instructions, each coded phrase drawing knowing looks from his inner circle. When discussing civilian complaints, his dismissive tone made clear that such concerns held little weight in his administration. Remember, we're not social workers. We're here to maintain order, not coddle criminals who cry about their treatment after getting caught. As officers dispersed, Maya approached the young Latina officer who had smiled earlier. "Officer Martinez," the woman introduced herself, extending her hand. "Jessica Martinez. Welcome to the zoo." "Maya Johnson. How long have you been here?" "6 months since academy graduation. Still trying to figure out if I made the right choice." Jessica's voice carried the weight of early disillusionment. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Detective Marcus Williams, a tall, lean black man in his 40s whose eyes held the wariness of someone who had learned to navigate dangerous waters through careful observation. "Johnson, I'm Williams, ready to see what downtown has to offer." As they walked to their patrol car, Maya noticed how other officers interacted with Marcus. Respectful but distant, as if his competence commanded acknowledgement while his race maintained invisible barriers. "Few things you should know," Marcus said quietly as they settled into their vehicle. "Hayes runs this place like his personal fiefdom. Got connections downtown that keep him untouchable. Best advice I can give you, do your job, stay professional, but don't rock the boat unless you want to find yourself transferred to the worst beat in the city." Maya absorbed his warning, recognizing the survival instinct that had kept Marcus employed for 15 years. "What about that civilian complaint I heard about during roll call?" Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. "Complainant alleges excessive force during a traffic stop. Hayes already decided it's unfounded, called it a nuisance complaint from a known troublemaker. Case will be closed by end of week." "Without investigation?" "Welcome to downtown, Johnson. Pick your battles carefully." That evening, alone in her apartment, Maya opened a small leather journal hidden in her dresser drawer. Her first day had revealed exactly what Commissioner Torres had suspected: a department rotting from the head down, where corruption had become so normalized that officers like Marcus saw silence as survival. She began writing, documenting every conversation, every dismissive comment, every institutional failure she had witnessed. Hayes's casual racism during roll call, his predetermined dismissal of civilian complaints, the atmosphere of intimidation that kept good officers silent. Maya stared at her reflection in the bedroom mirror, seeing both versions of herself: the undercover detective and the police chief who would soon have the power to transform this broken system. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as she walked deeper into the corruption she'd been sent to expose, each step bringing her closer to the confrontation that would reshape the Atlanta Police Department forever. The second week of Maya's infiltration began with a systematic approach that would have made her MBA professors proud. She arrived early each morning, using the quiet hours before shift change to access personnel files and review case histories. The data she discovered painted a disturbing picture of institutional discrimination that extended far beyond Hayes's casual prejudices. Maya positioned herself at a computer terminal in the records room, officially researching background information for current cases while covertly examining promotion records, complaint histories, and disciplinary actions. The data revealed a stark reality. Minority officers consistently received harsher punishments for minor infractions, while Hayes's favored officers, predominantly white, male, and loyal, faced minimal consequences for serious misconduct allegations. "Finding everything you need?" Sergeant Diane Foster's voice cut through Maya's concentration like a blade. Maya looked up to find Foster studying her with calculating eyes. Tall, blonde, and ruthlessly ambitious, Foster had positioned herself as Hayes's most trusted lieutenant through unwavering loyalty and a willingness to eliminate perceived threats. "I'm just familiarizing myself with departmental procedures. Different districts have different approaches. Foster moved closer, her smile predatory. Captain Hayes mentioned you're fitting in well. That's good. Some transfers struggle with our methods. They get confused about loyalty versus political correctness. The implied threat hung between them as Foster continued. We should grab coffee sometime. I could share insights about how to advance here. Captain Hayes values team players who understand the bigger picture. Maya recognized the recruitment attempt. She was testing her willingness to join Hayes' inner circle, to become complicit in the corruption that sustained their power structure. I appreciate the offer. Right now I'm focused on learning the job. Foster's smile flickered, noting Maya's careful non-commitment. Of course. Well, my door is always open if you want to discuss career advancement. Later that afternoon, Maya partnered with Marcus on a domestic disturbance call. The complainant, Maria Gonzalez, reported her ex-boyfriend's repeated violations of a restraining order. As they drove to the scene, Marcus provided context. Third call this month from Ms. Gonzalez. Hayes considers it a waste of resources, thinks she should handle her own problems instead of bothering police with relationship drama. They found Maria visibly shaken, showing them evidence of forced entry and threatening messages. Maya took detailed notes while Marcus conducted interviews, both officers treating the victim with professional respect. Previous officers told me there wasn't enough evidence, said maybe I was exaggerating for attention.
Maya's jaw tightened as she recognized the dismissive attitude Maria described. After completing their report, she noticed Marcus watching her carefully as she documented every detail of the victim's account. "You're thorough," Marcus observed as they returned to their patrol car. "Thoroughness prevents problems later," Maya replied, but she could see Marcus weighing her response, his instincts telling him something didn't add up about the new detective. Their conversation was interrupted by a radio call, backup needed for a traffic stop that had escalated. They arrived to find Officer Rodriguez, a Hispanic officer Maya had noticed during roll calls, standing beside a vehicle while Captain Hayes personally supervised the scene. "What's the situation?" Marcus asked. "Traffic violation turned into a search," Hayes replied, his tone suggesting he was enjoying the confrontation. "Driver got mouthy about his rights, so we're conducting a thorough investigation." Maya watched as Hayes directed the search with obvious relish, his comments to the driver, a young black man in a business suit, dripping with condescension. The driver remained calm despite the obvious harassment, his professional demeanor contrasting sharply with Hayes' aggressive posturing. "Sir, I've provided my license, registration, and insurance. What's the basis for searching my vehicle?" Hayes leaned closer to the driver's window. "The basis is I'm a police captain and you're nobody. Keep running your mouth and we'll find additional charges." Maya felt her professional instincts screaming as she witnessed the clear violation of constitutional rights, but maintained her cover while documenting mental notes about the encounter. The search yielded nothing, but Hayes managed to issue multiple citations for minor infractions that would never stand up in court. After the scene cleared, Maya found a quiet moment to speak with Officer Rodriguez. "Rough afternoon," she offered sympathetically. Rodriguez glanced around nervously before responding. "Every afternoon's rough when you're not part of Hayes' club. That driver was a lawyer heading home from court, but Hayes doesn't care. Makes us all look bad." "How long has this been going on?" "Long as I've been here. File a complaint and your career's over. Stay quiet and compromise your oath. No good choices." That evening, Maya made secure contact with Commissioner Torres from her apartment, using encrypted communication protocols they'd established. "Report," Torres said without preamble. "Worse than we suspected. Systematic discrimination, routine constitutional violations, complete dismissal of accountability. Hayes has created a culture where corruption is normalized and dissent is crushed." Documentation. Building, systematically, Need more evidence of financial irregularities and specific criminal conduct. Also need to identify potential allies. Marcus Williams and Jessica Martinez show promise. Be careful, Maya. Hayes has survived previous investigations through political connections. One misstep and you'll be blown before we can build a case. Maya understood the stakes. Her undercover mission represented the department's last chance for internal reform before federal intervention became inevitable. The DOJ consent decree hanging over the city meant that failure would result in outside oversight that could cripple the department for years. The following day brought a new challenge when Maya volunteered to assist with evidence processing, hoping to uncover the financial irregularities Torres suspected. In the evidence room, she discovered discrepancies in property seizures, expensive items confiscated during arrests that never made it to official inventory, their disappearance attributed to clerical errors. She was photographing documentation when Jessica Martinez entered unexpectedly. "Detective Johnson, I didn't expect anyone to be here." Maya quickly closed the files she'd been reviewing. "Catching up on paperwork. You?" She hesitated, clearly struggling with internal conflict. "Can I ask you something? Off the record?" Maya nodded, sensing opportunity. "Do you think it's normal for evidence to go missing? For complaint investigations to be closed without interviews? For officers to get different treatment based on who they know?" Maya recognized Jessica's moral crisis, a young officer watching her idealism crumble under institutional corruption. This was exactly the moment that could either create an ally or expose Maya's true mission. "What do you think?" Maya asked, carefully.
Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper. "I think I joined to serve justice, not participate in injustice. But everyone says that's naive, that this is how real police work gets done." Maya made a calculated decision. Real police work is based on integrity, not politics. The badge means something, or it doesn't. Their eyes met, and Maya saw recognition in Jessica's expression, not of her true identity, but of a kindred spirit committed to actual justice rather than institutional loyalty. "Detective Johnson," Jessica said quietly, "I think we might have more in common than I realized." By her third week undercover, Maya had established enough credibility to witness the department's darkest practices firsthand. The morning began with Hayes assigning her to a high-profile arrest, a drug dealer whose capture would generate favorable media coverage for the precinct. "Johnson, you're with Williams on the Morrison arrest," Hayes announced during roll call. "Big fish, multiple warrants. Make it clean. Press'll be watching." Marcus briefed her as they prepared tactical gear. "Morrison's been dealing near the university. Hayes wants this flashy to show the community we're tough on crime." They arrived at a rundown apartment complex where Morrison allegedly conducted business. Maya noticed immediately that Hayes had brought an excessive force presence. 8 officers for one suspect, riot gear for a routine arrest. The entry was textbook until Morrison, a slight man in his 20s, panicked and ran toward the back exit. Officer Thompson, one of Hayes's loyalists, pursued with unnecessary aggression, tackling Morrison violently despite the suspect showing no resistance after being cornered. Maya watched in horror as Thompson continued striking Morrison after he was subdued, the young man's face bloodying under the assault. Other officers stood by, some uncomfortable, but silent, others nodding approval. "Stop resisting!" Thompson shouted at Morrison, who lay motionless and compliant. Maya stepped forward instinctively. "He's not resisting."
Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Thompson glared at her. "Stay in your lane, Johnson. This is how we handle runners." Maya bit back her response, knowing any further intervention would blow her cover, but her body language conveyed disapproval that several officers noticed. Marcus caught her eye with a warning look. She was walking dangerously close to exposing herself.
Hayes arrived as Morrison was loaded into an ambulance, his satisfaction evident as news cameras captured the successful arrest. "Good work, people. This is what community policing looks like," Hayes announced for the media. Later, alone with Marcus in their patrol car, Maya struggled to contain her rage. Thompson could have killed him. Marcus studied her carefully. "You're not from around here, are you, Johnson?" The question caught Maya off guard. "East District, like I said." "No. I mean really from around here. Your reaction back there, most cops would have looked the other way or joined in. You looked ready to arrest Thompson yourself." Maya realized she'd let her professional standards show too clearly. Excessive force is excessive force. That attitude'll get you shipped out fast. Hayes doesn't tolerate officers who question his methods. That afternoon brought confirmation of Marcus's warning when Maya was summoned to Hayes's office. Lieutenant Bradley waited alongside Hayes, his discomfort obvious as he avoided eye contact. "Johnson, sit down," Hayes commanded. "I've been hearing interesting things about your approach to police work." Maya maintained professional composure. "Sir?" "Thompson mentioned you seemed concerned about his arrest techniques today. Bradley here says you've been asking unusual questions about departmental procedures." Bradley shifted uncomfortably. "Captain, Detective Johnson was just being thorough. I didn't ask for your assessment, Lieutenant." Hayes's voice cut through Bradley's attempted defense. "Johnson, where exactly did you work in East District?" Maya had prepared for this questioning, but Hayes's tone suggested he'd been investigating her background more thoroughly than expected. "Community Relations Division, primarily, some narcotics work."
Hayes smiled coldly. "Community relations, that explains the bleeding heart attitude. Well, let me be clear, this isn't East District. Here, we prioritize officers' safety and effective policing over political correctness." The implicit threat hung heavy in the room. Hayes suspected something about Maya, even if he couldn't identify exactly what troubled him. "Understood, Captain." "Good. Bradley will be partnering with you tomorrow. Consider it an opportunity to learn proper procedures." As Maya left Hayes's office, she realized the investigation had entered a dangerous new phase. Hayes was actively testing her loyalties, using Bradley as both spy and potential scapegoat. Her suspicions were confirmed that evening when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee tomorrow, 6 a.m., Murphy's Diner on Spring Street. Come alone. D.C." David Chen, the investigative reporter, had somehow obtained her personal number, meaning her cover might already be compromised. Maya deleted the message immediately, her mind racing through possibilities. The next morning, she arrived at Murphy's Diner to find Chen waiting in a back booth, his laptop and recorder discreetly positioned. Pulitzer Prize winner, known for exposing government corruption, Chen represented both opportunity and catastrophic risk. "Detective Johnson," Chen said quietly as she approached, "I thank you for coming." Maya remained standing. "I think you have me confused with someone else." "Please sit. I've been investigating allegations of corruption in your precinct. Multiple sources describe a culture of discrimination, excessive force, and cover-ups. Your name's come up as someone who might be willing to talk." Maya's blood ran cold. If sources were mentioning her name after only 3 weeks, her cover was already blown among officers she'd trusted. "I don't know what you've heard, but—" "Sit down," Chen interrupted, his voice urgent. "There's something you need to know. Hayes is planning to transfer you out. He's convinced you're either internal affairs or working with outside investigators." Maya slowly took the seat across from Chen, calculating her options rapidly. "I'm offering protection through media attention. Document what you've seen, provide testimony about Hayes's practices, and I'll ensure your story gets told before he can silence you." Maya stared at the reporter, recognizing that her carefully planned investigation was spiraling beyond her control. Hayes suspected her mission, potential allies were exposing her presence to journalists, and her window for gathering evidence was rapidly closing. "I need time to think.
You don't have time. Hayes is meeting with his connections downtown tomorrow. Whatever protection you think you have, it won't survive once he makes those calls. Maya left the diner with Chen's card, and a growing sense that her undercover mission had reached a critical juncture. The next phase would require her to choose between maintaining cover and protecting the investigation that could transform the entire department. Back at the precinct, she found Marcus waiting by her desk, his expression grim. "Johnson, we need to talk, now." Maya followed him to an empty interview room, sensing the walls closing in around her carefully constructed identity. "I know you're not who you claim to be," Marcus said quietly, closing the door behind them. "Question is, are you here to help us or destroy us?" Maya realized her moment of truth had arrived far sooner than planned. The next few seconds would determine whether her mission succeeded or failed spectacularly, whether she gained a crucial ally or created a dangerous enemy. The game of shadows was ending, and the real battle for the soul of the Atlanta Police Department was about to begin. Maya stared at Marcus across the interview room table, her mind calculating rapidly through possible responses. The veteran detective's eyes held no malice, only the wariness of someone who had learned to read people's true motivations through 15 years of survival in a hostile environment. "I'm here to do my job," Maya said finally, choosing her words with surgical precision. Marcus leaned back in his chair, steadying her face for telltale signs of deception. "My job is keeping my head down and collecting my pension. Your job seems to involve asking questions that could get us both killed." "What do you mean?"
Chen didn't contact you randomly, Johnson. Reporters don't waste time on officers who blend in. They target people who stand out, who make waves, who threaten the established order. Marcus's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Hayes knows something's off about you. The question is whether you're brave enough to trust someone who could help you, or stupid enough to go down alone. Maya felt the weight of decision pressing against her chest. Every instinct screamed caution. Her mission depended on maintaining cover, but her strategic mind recognized that Marcus represented her best chance of gathering the evidence needed to destroy Hayes' corrupt network. "If I were hypothetically investigating misconduct," she said carefully, "what would hypothetically be the most dangerous thing I could discover?" Marcus's slight smile suggested he appreciated her verbal maneuvering. "Hypothetically, follow the money. Hayes has been skimming from evidence seizures for years, funneling cash through his brother-in-law's security company. But the real prize would be the Green file." "Green file?" "Darnell Green, 17-year-old kid shot by Hayes' protege, Officer Kellerman, 2 years ago. Kid was unarmed, running from a traffic stop. Hayes personally handled the investigation, ruled it justified. Family filed federal lawsuit that mysteriously disappeared after their attorney received death threats." Maya felt ice form in her stomach. "The family?" "Moved out of state. Mother still calls occasionally asking why her son's killer is walking free while her family lives in exile." Marcus stood up, his decision made. "You want to hypothetically investigate corruption? Start with why a teenager's murder file is locked in Hayes' personal safe instead of the evidence room." That afternoon, Maya found herself assigned to investigate a civilian complaint against Officer Kellerman, the same officer Marcus had mentioned in connection with Darnell Green's death. The complainant, Mrs. Dorothy Washington, alleged that Kellerman had used excessive force during her grandson's arrest for a minor drug possession charge. "Simple case," Hayes explained as he handed Maya the file in his office. "Routine traffic stop, suspect resisted arrest, officer used appropriate force. Complainant is known for filing nuisance complaints against police. Close it quickly." Maya recognized the test immediately. Hayes was forcing her to either validate his officer's misconduct or reveal her true loyalties by conducting a genuine investigation. "I'll interview all parties and file a complete report," Maya replied neutrally. Hayes' eyes narrowed slightly. "Mrs. Washington has a history of making false allegations. Don't waste time chasing conspiracy theories."
That evening, Maya visited Mrs. Dorothy Washington's modest apartment in East Atlanta. The elderly woman greeted her with suspicious caution. Years of dealing with dismissive police officers had taught her to expect nothing but bureaucratic indifference. "Officer, I've told this story 3 times already. Each time, nothing happens. My grandson Jeremy is a good boy, honor roll student. Officer Kellerman beat him like he was a hardened criminal." Maya listened as Mrs. Washington described the arrest with heartbreaking detail. Jeremy, 18 years old and college-bound, had been pulled over for a broken taillight. During the search, Kellerman discovered a small bag of marijuana. Instead of issuing a citation, Kellerman had escalated the situation into a violent confrontation that left Jeremy hospitalized with a concussion and broken ribs. "Do you have medical records?" Maya asked, taking detailed notes. Mrs. Washington produced a manila folder thick with hospital documentation, photographs of Jeremy's injuries, and witness statements from neighbors who had recorded the arrest on their cell phones. Maya reviewed the evidence with growing horror. The medical records clearly documented injuries consistent with a severe beating. The cell phone videos showed Jeremy complying with orders while Kellerman struck him repeatedly with a baton. Most damning, the official police report bore no resemblance to the documented reality of the arrest. "Mrs. Washington, have you shown this evidence to other investigating officers?" The elderly woman's laugh held no humor. "Child, I've shown this to every officer who'd look. They all tell me the same thing. Their colleague followed proper procedure and Jeremy must have been resisting arrest. The truth doesn't matter when it threatens their brotherhood." Driving back to her apartment, Maya realized Hayes had miscalculated. He'd assigned her to bury a case that could expose the department's systematic cover-up of police brutality. Instead, she now possessed evidence that could destroy Kellerman's career and implicate Hayes in obstruction of justice. The next morning brought even more dangerous test. Maya arrived at work to find Hayes waiting at her desk with Sergeant Foster, both wearing expressions that suggested a predator approaching its prey. "Johnson, you're observing an interrogation today. Suspected drug dealer, been causing problems in the university district. Time to see how real police work gets done."
Maya followed them to interview room 3, where a young black man sat handcuffed to a metal chair. She recognized him immediately, Terrence Mitchell, a college junior she'd researched during her preparation for this assignment. Mitchell had no criminal record beyond minor traffic violations, but he fit the profile of Hayes's preferred targets: young, black, and insufficiently deferential to police authority. "Mr. Mitchell," Hayes began, his voice deceptively calm, "we know you're dealing drugs near the campus. Make this easy on yourself and tell us about your suppliers." "I'm not dealing anything," Mitchell replied, his voice steady despite obvious fear. "I'm a business major. I was walking to class when your officers grabbed me." Foster leaned forward aggressively. "We have witnesses placing you in drug transactions. Your cooperation now determines whether you face minor charges or federal trafficking penalties." Maya watched in horrified fascination as Hayes and Foster employed classic intimidation tactics: false claims about evidence, threats of excessive prosecution, psychological pressure designed to break down Mitchell's resistance. The interrogation was textbook coercion, designed to extract a confession regardless of actual guilt. "I want a lawyer," Mitchell said, finally. Hayes slammed his palm on the table. "Lawyers are for criminals. Innocent people answer questions." "I am innocent, and I want a lawyer." The interrogation continued for another hour, with Hayes and Foster taking turns applying psychological pressure while Maya documented every illegal technique they employed. When Mitchell finally broke down and tearfully confessed to crimes he clearly hadn't committed, Maya felt sick to her stomach. Outside the interview room, Hayes turned to Maya with satisfaction evident in his expression. "That's how you get results, Johnson. Criminals respect strength, not legal technicalities." "What about his request for an attorney?" Hayes's smile turned cold. "What request? Foster, did you hear any request for legal representation?" Foster shook her head with practiced innocence.
I heard a suspect confessing to drug trafficking. Sometimes criminals try to muddy the waters after they've already incriminated themselves. Maya realized she had just witnessed the systematic perversion of justice that defined Hayes's administration. Mitchell's confession would never hold up in court, but the arrest would destroy his college career and provide statistics Hayes could use to justify his aggressive policing methods. That evening, alone in her apartment, Maya received an unexpected phone call. "Detective Johnson, this is Reverend Patricia Williams from the Community Justice Coalition. I believe we need to talk." Maya's blood pressure spiked. If community leaders were contacting her directly, her cover was disintegrating rapidly. "I think you have the wrong number, Reverend." "Detective, I've been watching the department for 5 years since they killed my daughter. I know the difference between officers who enable corruption and those who fight it. You've been asking the right questions, treating our complaints seriously. That makes you either very naive or very dangerous to Captain Hayes." Maya stared out her apartment window, weighing the risks of engagement against the potential intelligence Reverend Williams might provide. "What do you want from me?" "Justice, Detective. My daughter Keisha was shot during a traffic stop 3 years ago. Hayes personally buried the investigation, claimed she was armed despite evidence proving otherwise. I've been documenting similar cases ever since, building a pattern of misconduct that federal authorities might find interesting." Maya's pulse quickened. Reverend Williams possessed exactly the community documentation needed to corroborate her own investigation. "That's a serious allegation, Reverend." "It's a serious problem, Detective. The question is whether you're part of the solution or part of the cover-up. Your actions over the next few days will provide the answer." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at her opened locker, its contents scattered across the floor like evidence at a crime scene. Her hidden investigation files were gone, along with the encrypted thumb drive containing her documentation of Hayes's corrupt practices. Only one item remained untouched, a note written in Hayes's distinctive handwriting: "My office, now."
Hayes' office door stood open, revealing the captain seated behind his desk, with Sergeant Foster positioned beside him like a loyal attack dog awaiting orders. The power dynamic was carefully orchestrated, Hayes in his position of authority, Foster as witness and enforcer, Maya summoned like a subordinate facing judgment. "Close the door, Detective Johnson," Hayes commanded, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a predator that had successfully cornered its prey. Maya complied, then stood at attention facing his desk. "You wanted to see me, Captain?" Hayes opened his desk drawer and withdrew a manila folder containing her investigation files. He spread the documents across his desktop with theatrical precision, each page representing another nail in her professional coffin. "Interesting reading material you've been collecting," Hayes said, his tone deceptively conversational. "Personnel files accessed without authorization, civilian complaint documentation photographed illegally, evidence room records copied without permission." He looked up at Maya with cold triumph. "Care to explain what you're really doing in my precinct?" Maya maintained her composure despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Captain, I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can," Hayes interrupted. "The question is whether you'll tell me the truth or continue your charade as a dedicated officer." Foster stepped forward, her ambition evident in every calculated movement. "Captain, the evidence clearly shows Detective Johnson has been conducting unauthorized surveillance of departmental personnel. This represents a fundamental breach of trust and loyalty." "Sergeant Foster raises an important point about loyalty," Hayes continued. "You see, Johnson, loyalty is what separates real police officers from spies, troublemakers, and political agitators. My officers understand that the badge represents brotherhood, mutual protection, and shared commitment to effective law enforcement." Maya recognized the interrogation techniques Hayes was employing, the same psychological pressure tactics she'd witnessed him use against Terrence Mitchell. He was attempting to break her down through intimidation while building a case for her termination. Sir, my documentation was part of thorough case preparation. Different districts have different bullshit. Hayes snapped, his mask of civility dropping completely. Marcus Williams warned me you were asking suspicious questions. Civilians are contacting you directly about complaints against my officers. Reporters know your name. You've been conducting a secret investigation into this department's operations. Maya's mind raced. Marcus had betrayed her confidence, revealing her suspicious behavior to Hayes. Either the veteran detective was more corrupt than she'd realized, or Hayes had applied pressure that forced Marcus to choose between his loyalty to Maya and his own survival. Captain Hayes, I understand your concerns, but do you? Hayes rose from his chair, circling his desk to stand directly in front of Maya. Because I think you're either internal affairs conducting an unauthorized investigation, or you're working with outside agitators trying to destroy this department's effectiveness. Foster moved closer as well, creating a physical intimidation formation designed to make Maya feel trapped and powerless. Internal affairs would have proper authorization, Foster added, her voice dripping with false reasonableness, which means Detective Johnson is likely collaborating with media outlets or civil rights groups trying to manufacture scandals where none exist. Hayes picked up one of Maya's photographed documents, the evidence room discrepancy report that documented missing seized assets. This represents confidential department information shared with unauthorized parties. That's a felony, Johnson. Criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice, theft of government property, violation of your oath as a police officer. Maya felt the walls closing in around her carefully constructed identity. Hayes possessed enough evidence to destroy her career and potentially pursue criminal charges. Her only hope lay in maintaining her cover long enough to escape with her mission intact. Captain Hayes, I understand your concerns, but do you? Hayes moved even closer, his physical presence deliberately intimidating. Johnson, I've been a police captain for 8 years. I know the difference between conscientious documentation and deliberate intelligence gathering. You've been systematically
collecting evidence against this department's officers with surgical precision that suggests professional training far beyond normal police academy instruction. Foster opened her notebook and began reading from her notes. Detective Johnson has accessed personnel files for 17 officers, photographed 33 civilian complaints, reviewed evidence room logs dating back 18 months, and met secretly with at least 2 community activists. This represents a comprehensive intelligence operation, not routine case preparation. Maya realized that Foster had been monitoring her activities far more closely than she'd suspected. The sergeant had compiled a detailed dossier of Maya's investigation, documenting every move she'd made during her undercover mission. Johnson, Hayes continued, I'm giving you one chance to come clean. Tell me who you're really working for, and I might consider limiting the criminal charges to internal discipline. Continue lying, and I'll ensure you face federal prosecution for conspiracy against law enforcement. Maya weighed her options rapidly. Maintaining her cover required either convincing Hayes that her activities were innocent mistakes or finding a way to escape his office without admitting her true identity. But neither option seemed viable given the evidence spread across his desk. Captain, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding about my intentions. Stop, Hayes commanded. Just stop. Foster, place Detective Johnson on administrative suspension pending internal investigation. Confiscate her badge, weapon, and any department property. Contact Internal Affairs and inform them we have a potential spy operating within departmental personnel. Foster stepped forward with obvious satisfaction, extending her hand expectantly. Detective Johnson, your badge and service weapon, please. Maya felt the moment crystallizing around her, the point where her carefully planned investigation transformed into a desperate struggle for survival. She looked at Hayes, seeing the corrupt captain's triumph written across his face, then at Foster, witnessing the sergeant's ruthless ambition finally achieving its goal. "I need time to contact my union representative," Maya said, stalling for any additional seconds that might provide an escape route. "You'll have plenty of time for phone calls from administrative desk duty, but first, you're going to tell me exactly who sent you here and what they hoped to accomplish." Maya stared at the evidence of her investigation scattered across Hayes's desk, recognizing that her mission had reached its critical juncture. The next few moments would determine whether her weeks of dangerous undercover work would destroy Hayes's corrupt network or merely result in her own professional destruction. The trap had closed around her with mechanical precision, but Maya Johnson, decorated officer and secret police chief, still possessed one final card to play. The morning roll call assembled with unusual tension crackling through the briefing room air. Officers filed into their seats with the subdued energy of spectators gathering for an execution. Their whispered conversations and sideways glances created an atmosphere of barely contained anticipation. Maya sat in her assigned chair near the back, her badge and service weapon confiscated, wearing her uniform like armor for what she knew would be her final performance as Detective Sergeant Johnson. Hayes entered the room with the measured stride of a conquering general, his satisfaction evident in every calculated step. Foster followed closely behind, carrying a manila folder thick with documentation that would serve as evidence in the public trial about to unfold. Lieutenant Bradley trailed reluctantly in their wake, his discomfort obvious to anyone who cared to notice. "Before we begin today's assignments," Hayes announced, his voice carrying unusual formality, "I need to address a serious breach of trust within this department." The room fell silent. Maya felt 30 pairs of eyes turning toward her with a mixture of curiosity, sympathy, and predatory anticipation. She maintained perfect posture and neutral expression, drawing on years of professional discipline to project calm dignity in the face of institutional destruction. Hayes opened Foster's folder and withdrew several documents, holding them aloft like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. "Detective Maya Johnson has been conducting unauthorized surveillance of departmental personnel for the past month. She has accessed confidential files without permission, photographed sensitive documents illegally, and collaborated with external agitators seeking to undermine this department's effectiveness." Jessica Martinez shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face reflecting the moral conflict of watching a respected colleague being publicly destroyed. Marcus Williams stared straight ahead, his expression carefully neutral, though Maya noticed his jaw muscles tightening with each of Hayes's accusations.
Maya listened to the carefully constructed narrative of her destruction, recognizing Hayes's skill at transforming her investigation into evidence of disloyalty and betrayal. To the assembled officers, she would appear as either a spy or a traitor, someone who had violated the sacred bonds of police brotherhood for unknown external purposes. Foster stepped forward to present additional evidence. Detective Johnson's actions weren't random mistakes or misunderstandings. She systematically targeted specific officers, documented specific incidents, and built comprehensive files that could only serve to damage this department's reputation and effectiveness. Hayes nodded gravely, accepting Foster's support like a grateful commander receiving intelligence from a trusted lieutenant. The evidence reveals a pattern of deception that began on Detective Johnson's first day with us. She lied about her background, misrepresented her intentions, and exploited our trust to gather information that could destroy careers and endanger officer safety. Maya felt the weight of institutional power crushing down on her carefully maintained identity. Hayes was systematically dismantling her credibility while building a narrative that would justify her termination and protect himself from any accusations she might later make. "Therefore," Hayes announced, his voice rising with theatrical authority, "effective immediately,
Detective Sergeant Maya Johnson is stripped of her detective status and reassigned to patrol duty. She will work under direct supervision until internal investigations determine the full extent of her misconduct and appropriate disciplinary measures. The room remains silent as Hayes removed Maya's detective badge from his pocket, the badge Foster had confiscated the previous afternoon, and placed it ceremoniously on the podium. This badge represents the trust and authority that Detective Johnson has betrayed. It will remain here as a reminder that police work demands absolute loyalty and uncompromising integrity. Maya sat perfectly still, her training preventing any visible reaction to the public humiliation. She noted which officers avoided eye contact, which appeared sympathetic, and which seemed to approve of Hayes's actions. The political dynamics of the room revealed themselves through body language and facial expressions that would help her understand the true power structure of the department. Hayes wasn't finished with his performance. He walked closer to Maya's seat, his proximity designed to emphasize her powerlessness in the face of his authority. "Officer Johnson," he said, deliberately using her reduced rank, "will spend the remainder of her time with this department learning proper respect for chain of command and appropriate loyalty to her fellow officers. Her actions have demonstrated that some people lack the character necessary for police work, but perhaps supervised patrol duty will teach her the fundamentals she somehow missed during her previous training." The verbal assault continued for several more minutes, with Hayes elaborating on themes of trust, loyalty, and institutional integrity, while systematically destroying Maya's professional reputation. Foster occasionally nodded approval or added supporting comments, playing her role as loyal lieutenant, witnessing the destruction of a dangerous threat to departmental unity. Finally, Hayes concluded his public execution. "Officer Johnson will report to Sergeant Wilson for patrol assignment. All personnel should understand that this department will not tolerate disloyalty, deception, or betrayal under any circumstances. We protect our own, but only those who deserve protection." As officers began filing out for their shifts, Maya remained seated, maintaining her dignified composure despite the professional devastation she had just endured. She noticed Jessica Martinez approaching hesitantly, her face reflecting genuine sympathy and internal conflict. "Johnson, I'm sorry. This doesn't feel right." Maya looked up at the young officer, seeing an ally struggling with the moral implications of witnessing institutional injustice. "Sometimes doing right costs more than we expect," Maya replied quietly. "The question is whether we pay that price or compromise our principles." Marcus Williams passed by without acknowledgement, though Maya caught his eye for a brief moment. Something in his expression suggested regret, possibly even shame, but he continued walking without offering any gesture of support. As the briefing room emptied, Maya sat alone with her thoughts, surrounded by empty chairs that moments earlier had contained 30 officers witnessing her public destruction. The institutional machinery had ground her identity to dust with mechanical efficiency, transforming Detective Sergeant Johnson from respected colleague to cautionary tale in the span of 15 minutes. But Maya Johnson wasn't defeated. Sitting in that empty briefing room, stripped of her detective status and facing patrol duty under hostile supervision, she felt a curious sense of liberation. Hayes had unwittingly provided her with the perfect setup for tomorrow's revelation. The more complete her humiliation today, the more spectacular her resurrection would appear when she walked into the precinct wearing her police chief uniform. The trap Hayes believed he had set for Maya was actually closing around him. His public destruction of Detective Sergeant Johnson would become the foundation for Police Chief Johnson's complete transformation of the Atlanta Police Department. Maya stood up slowly, straightened her uniform with deliberate precision, and walked out of the briefing room with quiet dignity. Tomorrow morning, she would return to this same building as the most powerful law enforcement official in the city, armed with documented evidence of Hayes' corruption and the moral authority that came from enduring injustice without surrendering her integrity.
The game was almost over, and Hayes had no idea that he had just handed victory to his greatest enemy. Maya's patrol car moved through Atlanta's downtown streets with the mechanical precision of routine, but her mind operated on an entirely different level. Sergeant Wilson, her newly assigned supervisor, sat in the passenger seat, maintaining the hostile silence Hayes had undoubtedly instructed him to enforce. The degrading assignment, a decorated detective reduced to supervised patrol duty, was designed to break her spirit and demonstrate the consequences of challenging Hayes's authority. Instead, Maya found the day's monotony strangely liberating. For the first time since beginning her undercover mission, she could think clearly without the constant pressure of maintaining her cover story. Hayes believed he had neutralized the threat she represented, which meant his guard would be lowered when she revealed her true identity tomorrow morning. Unit 47, respond to shoplifting complaint at 1247 Peachtree Street, the radio crackled. Copy, dispatch, Wilson replied, his tone suggesting he viewed even routine calls as burdens to be endured rather than service opportunities. At the electronics store, Maya took the lead in interviewing the store manager, while Wilson made minimal effort to participate. The complainant described a teenage suspect who had stolen a cell phone charger, a $15 item that would normally result in a citation in community service. Kid's probably part of a larger theft ring, Wilson commented dismissively. These people start small and work their way up to serious crimes. Maya bit back her response, recognizing Wilson's casual racism as another symptom of the institutional disease she would soon have the power to cure. Instead, Maya focused on conducting a professional investigation, treating both the store manager and the teenage suspect, when they located him, with the dignity Hayes's administration routinely denied. During their lunch break, Maya received a text message from an encrypted number. Package delivered to office. Tomorrow's schedule confirmed. -A-T. Commissioner Torres was confirming that Maya's chief uniform had been delivered to the precinct and that their coordinated revelation was proceeding as planned. Maya deleted the message immediately, her pulse quickening as she contemplated the transformation that awaited her in less than 18 hours. The afternoon brought an unexpected encounter when they responded to a domestic dispute call in the same neighborhood where Maya had previously interviewed Mrs. Washington about her grandson's beating. As they approached the apartment building, Maya noticed a familiar figure on the front steps. Jessica Martinez, out of uniform, apparently visiting someone in the building. Jessica looked up with surprise and obvious discomfort. "Johnson, I didn't expect to see you out here." "Patrol duty," Maya replied with carefully neutral professionalism. "Emergency call." Jessica glanced around nervously before stepping closer. "Listen, about what happened in roll call yesterday. A lot of us think Hayes went too far. The way he humiliated you in front of everyone, it wasn't right." Maya studied the young officer's face, seeing genuine moral distress beneath her professional exterior. "What wasn't right about it, Officer Martinez?" "You were trying to do good police work. Maybe your methods were different, but your intentions were good. Hayes made you look like some kind of traitor when everyone knows you were just being thorough." "And what does everyone think I should do about it?" Jessica struggled visibly with her answer. "I don't know. File a grievance, maybe? Transfer to another district? Just don't let them destroy you completely." Maya felt a surge of protective emotion towards Jessica, a young officer still fighting to maintain her idealism despite the corrupt environment Hayes had created. Tomorrow's revelation would vindicate Jessica's instincts and provide her with the leadership she deserved. "Sometimes things have to get completely broken before they can be properly fixed," Maya said cryptically. "Tomorrow might bring some interesting changes." Jessica looked puzzled but nodded uncertainly. "I hope so. For what it's worth, I think you got a raw deal." That evening, alone in her apartment, Maya conducted her final preparation ritual. She laid out her police chief uniform on her bed, crisp white dress shirt, dark blue jacket with 4 silver stars on each shoulder, perfectly creased trousers, and polished leather shoes that reflected the lamplight like mirrors. The transformation from disgraced patrol officer to departmental commander would be complete and dramatic.
Systematic cover-up of police misconduct, the financial irregularities in evidence seizures, everything needed to justify the comprehensive reforms she planned to implement. Maya's secure phone buzzed with an incoming call from Commissioner Torres. "Final briefing," Torres said without preamble. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" "Yes, ma'am. Hayes has no idea what's coming. His overconfidence in destroying my cover actually worked to our advantage. The mayor's office is prepared to support whatever actions you deem necessary. The DOJ investigators will be standing by in case you need federal backup. Media coordination is in place. Chen will break the story within an hour of your revelation." Maya nodded, though Torres couldn't see her. What about potential backlash from Hayes' political connections? Neutralized, the evidence you've gathered, combined with the DOJ's interest in avoiding a consent decree, has convinced everyone that supporting Hayes is political suicide. He's about to discover that his protective network has evaporated. And the officers who've been complicit in his misconduct? Torres paused before answering. "That's your call, Chief. You have the authority to clean house completely or attempt rehabilitation. Some careers will end regardless. Hayes, Foster, and their inner circle are finished. Others might be salvageable with proper leadership." Maya thought about Marcus Williams, Lieutenant Bradley, and the many officers who had remained silent not from malice, but from self-preservation in a hostile environment. "I'll evaluate each case individually. Some people were corrupted by the system, others created the corruption. There's a difference." "Agreed. Maya, I want you to know, what you've accomplished these past weeks represents some of the finest police work I've ever witnessed. You've single-handedly documented enough misconduct to justify federal intervention while maintaining your cover under extreme pressure. The department and the city owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Maya stared at her chief's uniform, feeling the weight of responsibility and opportunity that tomorrow would bring. "Commissioner, this was never about personal recognition. It was about honoring the oath we swore and the badge we wear. Tomorrow, we start rebuilding trust between police and community that's been destroyed by years of misconduct and cover-ups." After ending the call, Maya spent the remaining evening hours in quiet reflection, preparing mentally for the complete transformation of her professional identity. Detective Sergeant Johnson would cease to exist tomorrow morning, replaced by Police Chief Johnson with the power to reshape the Atlanta Police Department according to principles of integrity, accountability, and service. The long game was nearly over. Tomorrow would bring justice, revelation, and the beginning of institutional change that would echo through every precinct in the city. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Atlanta Police Department's entrance as Maya Johnson approached the building that had been her battlefield for the past month. But today, everything was different. Today, she wore her police chief's uniform for the first time, 4 silver stars gleaming on her shoulders, her badge of ultimate authority positioned precisely over her heart, her bearing transformed from that of a hunted undercover detective to the commanding presence of the city's highest-ranking law enforcement official. Maya paused at the glass doors, seeing her reflection staring back, no longer Detective Sergeant Johnson enduring Hayes' corruption, but Chief Johnson arriving to clean house with the full power of her office. She straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and stepped inside to reclaim her department. The first indication of the seismic shift about to occur came from Desk Sergeant Murphy, the same officer who dismissively directed her to Hayes' office on her first day. Murphy glanced up from his morning paperwork with the casual indifference he showed to all early arrivals, then did a double-take that nearly knocked him from his chair. Chief Johnson," Murphy stammered, his voice carrying across the lobby like a fire alarm. "I didn't know. We weren't told." "Good morning, Sergeant Murphy," Maya replied with calm authority, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she stood. "Please notify all shift supervisors that I'll be addressing the entire department in the main briefing room in 15 minutes. Murphy's shocked expression provided Maya with a preview of the reactions she would witness throughout the building. Word of her presence spread with the velocity of lightning, creating a cascade of shocked whispers and urgent phone calls as officers scrambled to understand how the woman Hayes had publicly humiliated yesterday had returned wearing the uniform of their ultimate commander. Maya walked through the building with measured steps, her presence transforming the atmosphere from routine morning preparation to barely controlled chaos. Officers emerged from break rooms and offices, their faces reflecting confusion, disbelief, and dawning recognition of the complete power reversal they were witnessing. "Is that Johnson?" she heard someone whisper. "Why is she wearing Chief's bars?"
Hayes is going to lose his mind when he sees this. Maya continued her procession toward the briefing room, noting which officers stepped aside respectfully and which remained frozen in shock. Jessica Martinez appeared from the locker room, her face lighting up with understanding and vindication as she realized that her instincts about Maya had been correct. "Chief Johnson," Jessica said, her voice filled with amazement and respect, "I knew there was something special about you." "Officer Martinez," Maya acknowledged with a slight smile, "thank you for maintaining your integrity even when it was difficult." The briefing room filled rapidly as word spread throughout the building. Officers filed in with the urgent energy of people witnessing history in real time, their conversations creating a buzz of anticipation and anxiety that filled the space like electricity before a thunderstorm. Maya positioned herself at the front of the room, her presence commanding immediate silence. She scanned the assembled faces, seeing the full spectrum of reactions: surprise, confusion, fear, and, in some cases, hope. These were her officers now, men and women whose careers and characters she would help reshape in the months ahead. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya began, her voice carrying the authority earned through years of exemplary service. "I am Chief Maya Johnson, recently appointed by Commissioner Torres to lead this department. Some of you may recognize me from my undercover assignment investigating allegations of misconduct and corruption." The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the shuffling of feet and nervous coughs as officers processed the magnitude of what they were hearing. For the past month, working under the identity of Detective Sergeant Johnson, I have documented systematic violations of constitutional rights, discriminatory enforcement practices, obstruction of justice, and abuse of authority. The investigation is now complete." Maya paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "Effective immediately, Captain Robert Hayes is suspended pending criminal investigation. Sergeant Diane Foster is suspended pending administrative review. All cases handled by these individuals over the past 2 years will be subject to independent audit." The room erupted in whispers and shocked exclamations. Maya raised her hand for silence, which came immediately, a testament to the absolute authority her revelation had established. At that moment, Hayes burst through the briefing room doors, his face flushed with rage and his uniform disheveled as if he had dressed hastily after receiving urgent phone calls about the situation. "What the hell is going on here?" Hayes shouted, his eyes scanning the room before focusing on Maya with pure hatred. "Johnson, you're on administrative suspension. You have no authority to—" He stopped mid-sentence as his brain finally processed what his eyes were seeing. Maya's chief's uniform, her 4-star insignia, the respectful attention of every officer in the room, all of it suddenly cohered into a reality so shocking that Hayes visibly staggered. "That's Chief Johnson, Captain Hayes, and you are under suspension pending investigation for civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and criminal conspiracy." Hayes's face cycled through multiple emotions: shock,
disbelief, rage, and finally the pale recognition of complete defeat. The man who had ruled this precinct like a personal kingdom suddenly understood that his reign was over and his career was finished. "This is impossible," Hayes stammered. You were... I suspended you myself. You're nobody. You're nothing." "Captain Hayes," Maya continued with implacable authority, "you will surrender your badge, service weapon, and department credentials to Lieutenant Bradley immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Any attempt to access department resources or contact department personnel will result in additional criminal charges." Foster appeared in the doorway behind Hayes, her face reflecting the desperate calculation of someone whose world was collapsing in real time. The sergeant who had enabled Hayes's corruption now faced the consequences of her choices as she watched her protector's authority evaporate. "Chief Johnson," Foster said, her voice shaking as she attempted damage control, "I want to make clear that I was following direct orders from Captain Hayes. If there were any improprieties in departmental procedures, I was merely—" "Sergeant Foster," Maya interrupted, "your suspension is effective immediately. You will have opportunities to explain your actions during the formal investigation." Maya turned back to address the assembled officers, many of whom remained in shock at the dramatic reversal of power they had just witnessed. "This department will undergo comprehensive reform beginning today. We will restore constitutional policing, rebuild community trust, and demonstrate that law enforcement serves justice rather than protecting corruption." She paused, scanning the faces of officers who would now serve under her command.
Those who committed crimes will face prosecution. Those who enabled misconduct through silence will face discipline. Those who wish to serve with integrity will find support and leadership. The choice each of you makes in the coming days will determine your future with this department. Hayes remained frozen in the doorway, his psychological collapse almost complete as he watched the institution he had corrupted being reclaimed by the woman he had tried to destroy. "This isn't over," Hayes said weakly, his threat carrying no conviction. "Yes, Captain Hayes," Maya replied with finality. "It is." The Atlanta Police Department transformed into controlled chaos within minutes of Maya's revelation. Officers dispersed from the briefing room with urgent energy, some making phone calls to warn friends about the impending investigation, others seeking information about how the dramatic leadership change would affect their careers. The building hummed with conversations as personnel tried to process the complete inversion of power they had just witnessed. Maya established her command presence in the chief's office, a space she was entering for the first time despite having been appointed to the position weeks earlier. The room reflected Hayes's tenure, photographs with political allies, commendations that predated his corruption, and furniture arranged to intimidate visitors rather than facilitate collaboration. Her first official act involved summoning Lieutenant Bradley, whose conflicted loyalties during her undercover mission revealed both character flaws and potential for redemption. "Lieutenant Bradley," Maya began, her tone professional but not hostile, "your actions during my investigation demonstrated someone caught between conscience and self-preservation. I need to understand where your loyalties actually lie." Bradley stood at attention, his years of military bearing evident despite his obvious nervousness. "Chief Johnson, I want to apologize for not supporting you when I should have. Captain Hayes created an environment where speaking up meant career suicide, but that doesn't excuse my failure to act on what I knew was wrong." Maya studied Bradley's face, reading genuine remorse in his expression. "What did you know was wrong?" Hayes's treatment of civilian complaints, his discriminatory enforcement priorities, the way he protected officers who should have been disciplined. I documented concerns privately, but never found the courage to report them formally. "Show me your documentation." Bradley produced a manila folder from his briefcase, containing detailed notes about departmental misconduct dating back 3 years. The evidence corroborated Maya's investigation while revealing that Bradley had been conducting his own unofficial oversight of Hayes's administration. Lieutenant, you failed to act when action was required, but you maintain detailed records that will help us rebuild this department properly. Your honesty today, combined with your cooperation during the investigation, will determine whether you have a future here. Relief flooded Bradley's features. Chief, I want to be part of the solution. Tell me what you need from me. Maya's secure phone buzzed with an incoming call from Commissioner Torres. Chief, the media response is intense. Channel 11 just broke the story and CNN is picking it up nationally. David Chen's article goes live in 30 minutes with full details of your undercover investigation. Through her office window, Maya could see news vans beginning to gather in the parking lot, their satellite dishes extending like mechanical flowers reaching toward the sun. The story of her dramatic revelation would capture national attention, providing both opportunity and pressure for comprehensive reform. What's the reaction from City Hall? Maya asked. Complete support for whatever actions you deem necessary. The mayor's office is preparing a statement praising your courage and announcing full cooperation with federal oversight if required. After ending the call, Maya summoned Marcus Williams, whose complex role during her investigation required immediate clarification. The veteran detective entered with obvious apprehension, uncertain whether he would face discipline or recognition for his actions. Detective Williams, Maya began, your warning to Hayes about my activities could have destroyed this investigation. Explain your decision. Marcus sat heavily in the chair across from her desk, his weariness evident. Chief, Hayes threatened to transfer me to a desk job if I didn't report suspicious behavior from new personnel. I gave him minimal information while trying to protect you from exposure. Maybe I made the wrong choice, but I was trying to survive long enough to see change happen. Maya recognized the impossible position Hayes had created for officers like Marcus, good people forced to choose between principles and self-preservation in a corrupt system. Your survival instinct was understandable, Detective, but it nearly compromised the investigation that will transform this department. Moving forward, I need officers who choose integrity even when it's difficult.
Marcus nodded slowly. Chief, I've been keeping my head down for 15 years, watching good officers destroyed for speaking up. If you're really going to change this place, count me in. I'm tired of being afraid of doing the right thing. Maya's afternoon was consumed by urgent meetings with internal affairs investigators, federal prosecutors reviewing her evidence for potential criminal charges, and community leaders who had been fighting Hayes's administration for years. Reverend Patricia Williams arrived with a delegation of civil rights activists, their faces reflecting cautious optimism tempered by years of disappointment. Chief Johnson, Reverend Williams said, the community has heard promises of reform before. What makes this time different? Maya spread her investigation files across her desk, revealing the documented pattern of misconduct that would serve as the foundation for systemic change. Reverend Williams, previous reform efforts failed because they addressed symptoms rather than causes. This investigation documented the institutional culture that enabled corruption. We're not just changing policies, we're changing the fundamental relationship between police and community. The community delegation spent 2 hours reviewing evidence and discussing reform priorities. Maya committed to establishing civilian oversight, implementing implicit bias training, and creating community advisory committees with real authority to influence departmental policies. As evening approached, Maya received word that Hayes had been arrested at his home on federal civil rights charges. FBI agents had seized his personal files, computer, and financial records as part of a comprehensive investigation that would likely expand to include other corrupt officials throughout the city government.
Foster's arrest followed hours later, her attempts to distance herself from Hayes's misconduct proving insufficient once federal prosecutors reviewed Maya's documentation. The sergeant who had enabled corruption while pursuing her own advancement would now face the consequences of her choices. Jessica Martinez requested a meeting as Maya prepared to leave the office after her first day as revealed chief. The young officer entered with obvious excitement and gratitude. "Chief Johnson, I wanted to thank you for what you've done. When I graduated from the academy, I believed police work was about serving justice and protecting people. Hayes made me question whether I belonged in law enforcement. Now I feel hopeful again." Maya smiled, seeing in Jessica the future of reformed policing. "Officer Martinez, your instincts and integrity during my investigation identified you as someone with leadership potential. Would you be interested in accelerating your career through the detective training program?" Jessica's face lit up with possibilities she had thought Hayes' administration had destroyed. "Yes, ma'am. I want to be part of building something better." As Maya finally left the precinct that evening, she paused at the main entrance to observe the media circus documenting her story. Reporters were describing her undercover investigation as one of the most dramatic examples of police reform leadership in recent memory, with her willingness to endure public humiliation while gathering evidence becoming a symbol of the courage required to confront institutional corruption. The Atlanta Police Department she was leaving behind bore little resemblance to the corrupt institution Hayes had commanded a month earlier. Hayes' reign of corruption was finished, his enablers faced criminal prosecution, and a new culture based on integrity and accountability was beginning to emerge. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from Commissioner Torres. "Outstanding work, Chief. The federal monitor assigned to oversee our reforms called it the most effective internal investigation he's witnessed. You've saved the department and the city." As she drove home through Atlanta's evening traffic, Maya reflected on the transformation that had brought her from undercover detective enduring daily humiliation to police chief with the power to rebuild law enforcement according to constitutional principles. The badge she wore now carried the same authority it had always possessed, but tomorrow she would begin wielding that authority to serve justice rather than protect corruption. The undercover mission was complete. The work of reform was just beginning. 3 months after Maya's dramatic revelation, the Atlanta Police Department bore little resemblance to the corrupt institution Hayes had commanded. The morning briefing room buzzed with productive energy as officers discussed community engagement strategies, rather than discussing ways to avoid accountability. Maya stood at the podium where Hayes had once delivered his discriminatory instructions, now addressing a department transformed by comprehensive reform. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya announced, "I'm pleased to report that civilian complaints have decreased by 60%, while community approval ratings have reached their highest levels in 15 years. This demonstrates that constitutional policing and effective law enforcement aren't contradictory goals, they're complementary necessities." The assembled officers reflected the cultural shift Maya had implemented. Jessica Martinez sat in the front row wearing detective's insignia, her promotion recognizing both her integrity during the Hayes era and her leadership potential in the reform department. Marcus Williams occupied a new position as Deputy Chief for Community Relations, his survival instincts now channeled towards building bridges between police and citizens.
Detective Martinez will present this week's community partnership initiatives, Maya continued, stepping aside as Jessica approached the podium, with confidence that would have been unimaginable during Hayes' administration. "We've established advisory committees in each district," Jessica reported, with community leaders providing input on enforcement priorities and officer training. Reverend Williams' organization has become our primary partner for conflict resolution and restorative justice programs. The transformation extended beyond personnel changes to fundamental operational philosophy. Maya had implemented implicit bias training, de-escalation protocols, and accountability measures that made misconduct both detectable and costly. Officers who had thrived under Hayes' corrupt system either adapted to the new standards or found employment elsewhere. Lieutenant Bradley had chosen early retirement rather than navigate the reformed department's emphasis on ethical leadership. His departure, while disappointing, demonstrated that lasting change sometimes required personnel transitions for those too invested in the previous system. Sergeant Foster faced a different fate entirely. Criminal charges related to her enabling of Hayes's misconduct resulted in a plea agreement that included termination and probation. Her ambitious pursuit of advancement had led instead to professional destruction and legal consequences that would follow her for years. Hayes himself awaited federal trial on civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy charges. His political connections had evaporated once Maya's evidence became public, leaving him isolated and facing significant prison time. The captain who had ruled his precinct like a personal kingdom now confronted the accountability he had spent years avoiding. "Chief Johnson," David Chen's voice called from the back of the briefing room. Maya had invited the investigative reporter to observe the department's transformation, recognizing that media transparency helped maintain public trust. "Yes, Mr. Chen?" "How do you sustain these reforms when political pressures inevitably change?" Maya smiled, having anticipated the question that struck at the heart of lasting institutional change. "Mr. Chen, sustainable reform requires embedding new values so deeply into departmental culture that they become self-reinforcing. We've promoted officers who demonstrate integrity, implemented systems that reward ethical behavior, and established community partnerships that create external accountability. The changes we've made aren't dependent on any individual leader. They're built into the institution's DNA." As the briefing concluded, Maya reflected on the journey from undercover detective enduring daily humiliation to police chief leading comprehensive reform. The badge she wore carried the same authority it always had, but now that authority served justice rather than protecting corruption. The Atlanta Police Department had been reborn, demonstrating that courageous leadership combined with institutional power could transform even the most corrupt systems into instruments of genuine public service. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Commissioner Torres. "Federal Monitor recommends ending oversight 6 months early. Outstanding work, Chief. You've exceeded every expectation." Walking through her reformed department, Maya saw officers treating citizens with dignity, investigating complaints thoroughly, and maintaining professional standards that honor their oath of service. The transformation was complete, but the work of maintaining integrity would continue forever. Justice had prevailed, and a new order built on constitutional principles had emerged from the ashes of Hayes's corrupt regime.